I left town thinking I was doing everything right. 2 weeks off, phone on silent, stress packed away like winter clothes. My wife and I headed down to a little coastal town in Central America where the air smells like salt and mangoes and nobody cares what time it is. I remember laying in a hammock the first night, listening to the bugs scream like they were arguing over rent, thinking, yeah, this is what peace feels like. What I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that back home, while I was zip-lining over rainforests and convincing myself I deserved happiness, someone else was standing at the locked gate of my ranch, squinting at it like a scratch-off ticket she was sure was a winner. Her name wasn't Karen. Let's call her Brenda Holt. And if you've ever lived under an HOA, you already know exactly who Brenda is without me explaining. Yoga pants that cost more than your monthly utilities, a clipboard like it's an extension of her spine, and that smile. The one that isn't friendly, it's administrative. Brenda was the president of the Homeowners Association in my area, a woman who believed rules weren't boundaries, they were weapons. She saw my place empty, not temporarily unoccupied, not clearly private property with a locked gate and posted signage. She saw opportunity. According to later testimony, Brenda told someone, "It's a shame to let a property just sit there," which is HOA speak for if you're not using it exactly how I approve, I might as well. So while I was sipping something with a paper umbrella in it, Brenda broke into my ranch. No notice, no permission, no emergency. She cut the lock, opened the gate, and by the end of that week, strangers were hauling roller suitcases across my gravel driveway like they'd owned the place for years. She listed it online as a community retreat, slapped up fake approval notices, even zip-tied laminated HOA seals to my gate like it was some kind of low-budget resort. And the wildest part? People believed her. I didn't find out until I got back. Jet-lagged, sunburned, still half mentally in vacation mode. I turned onto my road and immediately knew something was wrong. There were tire tracks where there shouldn't be any, deep ruts pressed into gravel I'd smoothed myself, and the smell hit me before the sight. Charcoal, grease, that unmistakable aroma of someone else's cookout. Then I saw the patio. Barbecue stains splashed across the concrete like a crime scene. Folding chairs that weren't mine stacked against my wall, and my barn door, hanging crooked, busted clean off its track. Later I'd find out it had been used as a backdrop for social media photos. #rustic. #blessed. I parked and stepped out, still trying to process it, when I heard splashing. Kids. In my pool. Kids I had never seen before, screaming, cannonballing, living their best lives while their parents lounged under my gazebo with drinks in their hands, sunglasses on, acting like they paid the mortgage. One woman looked up at me, smiled, and waved. Not a nervous wave. Not a confused one. A confident wave. She said, "Oh good, you're back. Can you bring us more towels? The kids are soaking through them." For a second, I honestly thought my brain had short-circuited. I stood there, mouth open, trying to decide if this was exhaustion or some kind of prank show. Then I said, very calmly, "Ma'am, I own this property." Her smile froze. Just for a second. Like bad Botox meeting reality. Then she laughed. "Oh no," she said, waving her hand. "We booked this through the HOA's rental program. It's all approved by the community board." That's when the heat kicked in. The kind that starts behind your eyes and works its way down your spine. I told them, politely at first, that there was no such program, that they were trespassing, and that they needed to leave. They didn't argue. They stalled. 10 minutes later, as suitcases were being dragged back toward the gate, a white SUV pulled up like it was on cue. Out stepped Brenda Holt. Wide-brimmed sun hat. Clipboard tucked under her arm. Cucumber water in hand like she was hydrating through crime. She smiled fast, talked faster. "Well, technically," she said, flipping pages she didn't need. "The property was idle, and under subsection." I didn't let her finish. I nodded, smiled, and said, "Cool. I'll see you in court." She laughed. Not nervous laughter. Not defensive laughter. Amused laughter. The kind of laugh someone gives when they're sure you won't follow through. Like I was just another homeowner who'd stomp, complain, send an angry email, and then quietly give up because that's what people usually do. She thought wrong. Because while she drove away sipping her cucumber water, I stood there looking at my broken gate, my trashed patio, the dent in my barn door, and something flipped. I didn't yell. I didn't threaten. I called a friend. His name, changed for this story, was Evan Cruz, a litigation bulldog I knew from years back, the kind of guy who hears the words unauthorized leasing and smiles like he just smelled fresh coffee. I told him what happened, all of it, and when I finished, there was a pause on the line. Then he said, "Man, I haven't eaten this good in months." That's when I knew this wasn't going to be a quick argument or an HOA meeting with folding chairs and passive-aggressive comments. This was war. We documented everything. Photos, timestamps, listings, fake approvals, damaged property, witness statements from neighbors who'd been told, "Don't worry, it's all cleared." And Brenda? She didn't back down. She doubled down. She stood in front of the HOA board like a queen addressing peasants and said it was a misunderstanding, an interpretation issue, a community-minded decision. She used words like temporary allocation and collective benefit. What she didn't realize, what people like Brenda never realize, is that confidence doesn't equal legality. And the moment she turned my private ranch into her personal cash machine, she crossed a line she couldn't uncross. That's where the story really begins. All right, pause the movie for a second, because this is the part where a lot of people get confused, and honestly, where HOAs count on that confusion. According to standard procedure, an HOA does not own your property. Ever. Not the land, not the structure, not the right to profit from it. What they own, on paper, is the authority to enforce specific rules that you agreed to when you bought in. Things like lawn height, paint colors, noise limits. Boring stuff. Maintenance stuff. Not, "Hey, let's turn Jim's ranch into a vacation rental while he's out of the country." From a legal perspective, what Brenda did wasn't creative interpretation. It was a greatest hits album of violations. Trespass, unauthorized entry, fraudulent representation, unlawful leasing. And here's the big one people miss: impersonation of ownership. The moment she told strangers she had the right to rent out that land, she crossed from HOA overreach into criminal territory. Now let's talk psychology for a second, because this is a psychological trap. HOAs attract a certain personality type, not all of them, but enough that it's a pattern. People who crave control, who feel small in other areas of life, suddenly get access to rules, fines, and perceived authority. Over time, enforcement turns into entitlement. "I enforce the rules" becomes "I am the rules." Add money to that equation, especially easy money, and the moral compass spins fast. Brenda didn't wake up thinking, "I'm going to commit fraud today." She told herself a nicer story. It's for the community. It's temporary. He won't even notice. That self-justification is how people step off cliffs without realizing how far they're falling. And here's the thing. HOAs rely on homeowners not knowing where their power ends. Silence, intimidation, and paperwork fatigue are tools. Once you push back with facts and legal pressure, the illusion collapses fast. Okay, back to the story. Because once the legal machine started moving, Brenda's confidence didn't just crack, it shattered. Once lawyers get involved, time starts moving differently. Days feel slow, nights feel shorter, and every phone buzz makes your stomach tighten just a little. Evan moved fast, not reckless fast, deliberate fast, like someone who knew exactly where this road was going and wanted to enjoy the drive. Cease and desist letters went out first. Not one or two. Every single person who had stepped foot on my land got one. Polite but firm, the legal version of "you were lied to, you need to leave, and you are not welcome back." One family tried to return anyway, insisting they'd paid for a full week. Evan met them at the gate with a court order and a local deputy who looked deeply unimpressed with their laminated HOA approval printout. That's when the story leaked. Local reporters love two things: abuse of power and hypocrisy, and Brenda was serving both on a silver platter. A headline popped up that made me laugh for the first time in weeks. HOA president turns private ranch into unofficial resort. That laugh didn't last long. Brenda called an emergency HOA meeting, and this time, people actually showed up. Not the usual dozen retirees and bored spouses. This was standing room only. Homeowners asked questions she couldn't dodge. Why was a locked gate broken? Who authorized the listing? Why were guests charged fees that didn't appear in any HOA budget? She stuttered through a prepared statement, voice tight, hands shaking just enough to notice. When Evan walked in late, calm as ever, the room went dead quiet. He didn't sit down. He didn't smile. He said, "We'll be seeing all of you in court. Unless you'd like to settle now, with full restitution, a formal apology, and Brenda's immediate resignation. Someone dropped a pen. Someone else whispered, "Oh, damn." Brenda cried. Real tears this time. She said she was just trying to help the community, that funds were low, that no one was supposed to get hurt. The board didn't defend her. Silence is a loud thing when you're used to applause. The courtroom, though, that's where her story finally collapsed. The judge was an older guy, slow-speaking, sharp-eyed, the kind of man who looked like he'd fixed fences before breakfast and lies before lunch. He listened, let her lawyer talk himself in circles about ambiguous clauses and community benefit. Then he leaned forward. "You're telling me," he said slowly, "that you broke into a man's property, rented it out like a hotel, collected money under false authority, and now you're asking this court to believe it was a misunderstanding." Her lawyer tried to respond. Failed. That's when Evan stood up. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't dramatize. He just laid it all out. Financial records first. A separate bank account labeled Community Retreat Fund. Every payment from every guest routed there. Then the withdrawals. Her name. Over and over again. Credit card payments. A contractor invoice for a brand new deck. A luxury spa weekend booked while I was still cleaning grease off my patio. The courtroom murmured. Then Evan pulled out the email. Printed. Highlighted. Dated. A message Brenda had sent to her sister before we ever left town. Found a way to make easy money while the ranch guy's gone. You could hear air leave the room. Not dramatically, just enough to feel it. Brenda tried to speak. Stopped. Tried again. Said it was a coincidence. Evan raised an eyebrow, just slightly, and the judge didn't even look at her anymore. The verdict didn't take long. Guilty on every count. Trespass. Fraud. Unlawful leasing. Impersonation of ownership. Restitution plus triple damages. Immediate freeze on her accounts. Asset seizure. The deck she built with stolen money? Ordered dismantled and sold. And then, the line that made half the courtroom gasp. The HOA itself was ordered dissolved pending a federal audit. Turns out Brenda hadn't just skimmed from me. She'd been skimming for years. Suddenly, the woman who'd fined people for mismatched curtains was surrounded by neighbors lawyering up, comparing notes, realizing the math had never added up. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed her. Was it about money or power? Do you regret impersonating the property owner? She pulled her coat tighter, eyes wild, and said the quiet part out loud. I thought he wouldn't find out. That sentence followed her everywhere. Within a month, her house was in foreclosure. Her SUV got repossessed from a grocery store parking lot. Her social media vanished, except for screenshots people kept reposting with captions like HOA royalty and Queen of Overreach. She tried to move in with family. Didn't work. Nobody wanted the association. As for me, I fixed the gate, repaired the barn, cleaned the patio, and when everything was finally quiet again, I did something Brenda never understood. I opened the ranch, but on my terms. No profit, no listings, just veterans, foster kids, community groups who needed space more than selfies. Every event started the same way, with a framed photo of Brenda's mugshot and a simple sign underneath it. This property is HOA free. Trespassers will be sued into next year. After the court dates, the paperwork, the repairs, and the quiet finally settled back in, I found myself thinking less about Brenda and more about how this ever got that far. Because the truth is, stories like this don't start with broken gates or fake listings. They start way earlier, in much smaller moments most people ignore. The lesson here is, power doesn't usually arrive wearing a villain costume. It shows up holding a clipboard, smiling politely, asking for just a little flexibility. HOAs are especially good at this because they exist in a gray zone, half neighbor, half authority, and when that balance tilts, it creates confusion people are afraid to challenge. From a legal perspective, the biggest mistake homeowners make is assuming silence equals consent. It doesn't. Ever. Not in contracts, not in property law, and definitely not with HOAs. Brenda thrived because people didn't push back early. They rolled their eyes, paid the fines, muttered under their breath, and moved on. That pattern trained her. Every unchecked overstep became proof, in her mind, that she was untouchable. This is a psychological trap. Once someone gets away with a misuse of authority, their internal story changes. They stop asking, "Can I do this?" and start asking, "How far can I go?" Brenda didn't just want money. She wanted validation. Control. The rush of being the person who decided what was allowed and what wasn't. The The ranch wasn't just property, it was a stage. And here's the uncomfortable part. Systems don't fail all at once. They fail slowly, through apathy. HOAs don't become predatory overnight. They become predatory when decent people disengage because it feels easier than fighting. Brenda didn't overpower the community, she outlasted it. According to standard procedure, every homeowner has more rights than they think. Access to bylaws, voting power, the ability to demand transparency, the right to legal counsel. But rights only matter if you're willing to use them. Paperwork fatigue is real, and HOAs rely on it. They count on you being tired, busy, intimidated, or unsure. What changed everything in this story wasn't anger, it was clarity. Once the facts were laid out, once the law stepped in, once receipts replaced rhetoric, the illusion collapsed. Power that depends on intimidation can't survive daylight. So if you're watching this and thinking, my HOA isn't that bad, good. I hope it stays that way. But if you've ever felt that tightening in your chest reading a vague violation notice, or watched someone on a board act like they were above the rules, don't ignore it. Ask questions early. Document everything. Know where authority ends. Because people like Brenda don't see boundaries as lines. They see them as suggestions. As for me, I still get messages. Homeowners asking what they should do, how far is too far, when to escalate. I tell them the same thing every time. Don't wait for your ranch to be rented out behind your back. The moment something feels off is usually the moment it is. And if there's one last takeaway I want to leave you with, it's this. Communities work best when accountability flows both ways. Rules without oversight turn into tools. Authority without limits turns into entitlement. And silence is the fertilizer that lets it all grow. So talk about it. Share stories. Push back when you need to. Because the only thing worse than a power-hungry HOA president is one who's never been told no. Now I'm curious, have you ever dealt with an HOA that crossed the line, or someone who thought a title made them untouchable? Drop your story in the comments. Let's compare notes.